Oh, okay. I'm just going to start in 3, 2, and 1. 3 things that CG believe in this debate. First, we believe that this is a purpose of motion. Hence, government side has an obligation to give you a nod why status quo is not enough, and the proposal will be the solution for their problems. Second, I think we can all agree that the refugees should be protected at any cost. But this debate isn't talking about rather than isn't talking about the protection towards the refugee itself, rather than which proposal will give you better protection towards all refugees. So we're going to talk about mechanism and how it's going to be conducted. Third of all, CG, think opposition bench, cannot run away from their obligation to bring a counterfactual of our proposal. Without that, opposition will lose this debate. Okay, let's map what OG said in this debate. First of all, OG is super centric. Seem like they're talking a lot about, like they're just going to allocate their refugee to some countries within the similar organization, for example, EU or something like that to begin with, right? This is exactly why it is super status quo centric, because it's already happening in our status quo. Hence, this kind of motion is not going to be happening due to the fact that status quo is enough. This is exactly why OG will lose this debate, because they never explain to you why status quo is enough in the first place. This is exactly what's the burden of proof that OG will have to talk in the first place. Second of all, OJ talks a lot about protection and whatnot, but never told you how it's going to be happening under their proposal. Since their proposal is literally what we witness in our status quo right now, hence CG will bring a new model to elevate this debate. Okay, rebuttal sword opening opposition will be intertwined in my argument. Okay, so this is a mechanism that we were going to bring in this debate. Okay, so 3 things. First, how we're going to create a new country itself to begin with. 2 options. First, whether we can have a new country from a nowhere land, or second, we can replace an existing country to begin with. This is exactly what's missing on the opening government side of the house. We say we're going to just go ahead and replace an existing country. 2 points. First, why is it okay? We say it's okay due to the fact that we're gonna try to replace a poor to developing countries, e.g. Kenya, Trinidad, or some countries similar to that. On that level of analysis, I think all the facilitation, laws, democracy, and whatnot is not going to be the problem, since this country doesn't have anything at all in the first place, right? Moreover, this proposal is going to bring betterment towards those kind of nation to begin with. 2 things. First, notice that there is going to be an incentive for this nation to be the host, due to the fact there is going to be fundings from other governments. Hence, the development of the countries itself is going to be better and faster. We say this is going to be okay to allocate some money to develop public facility, because those facilitation will be used by refugees anyway. B, in the point of view of locals, now they're able to get the betterment towards the facilitation of that we have in the first place. Now they're going to be able to manifest all the benefits, e.g. free healthcare, education, and whatnot to begin with. Second of all, why this is important? Look, OG is super status quo centric as I said, right? We say status quo is not enough. Look how OG bypassed the idea of granted permission and whatnot. It is super hard for the refugees to live on a country, let alone the discrimination that in the country itself. This is exactly why our model is going to be better. Which is replacing an existing country in our side of the house. Which is existing country in our side of the house. We believe in the idea of peacefulness and relatability. In CG, all refugee will be seen as a victim. No such thing as discrimination, because this is a neutral country. Okay, let's talk about accessibility. This is classing towards the opening opposition's case. Accessibility is going to be better in our side of the house due to the fact that now this country is going to be focused on menampung refugees from all across the world. Hence, all the granting permission and whatnot is not going to be the problem in our side of the house, because this is a safety zone for all countries. For example, the moment there is an Afghanistan refugee, they're super limited to go to, for example, France, Germany, or something like that, due to the fact that those kind of country doesn't have a lot of space to spare, nor those kind of country doesn't really want to accept more refugees. For example, there is a quota for refugee itself to begin with. This is exactly what's harming our status quo right now. This is exactly we need a new country as what we are proposing in this debate. Hence, those kind of accessibility is going to be fall better in our and closing government side of the house. Second of all, talking about the discrimination towards this kind of people to begin with, I think discrimination is not going to be happening in our side of the house due to the fact that this is now a safety zone, meaning that everybody in this nation is going to be the majority, is going to be the refugees itself to begin with, where they are able to feel and relate to all to each other to begin with. Hence, those kind of discrimination is going to be super less likely to happen in our side of the house due to the fact that they're still in poor condition and also they're still in trauma to begin with. Hence, they're just going to be focusing on their own development rather than talking shit about people in those kind of country to begin with. Okay, moving on to the second characterization, how is it going to be go in the how is it going to go in the present? Two things. First, there's going to be like a sense of survival that is going to be in within the human itself to begin with. Hence, those kind of people are just going to be able to just like have the idea of just getting a job or something like that to begin with. At the end of the day, this kind of situation is going to create some sort of like a productivity in within the country itself to begin with. This is exactly why at the end of the day, the betterment is going to be better. The betterment of the country itself is going to be happening in our side of the house due to the fact that the productivity rate is going to be increasing in our side of the house. And unlike in your side of the house, those kind of thing is not going to be beneficial at the end of the day. And those kind of refugee are going to be seen as someone who are just a burden or something like that. Then hence the discrimination that you're talking about in OG and also OO is going to be happening. This is exactly why we need a new country. Second of all, about the discussion and also research will be better in our side of the house due to the fact that now we're going to collect all those kind of refugees and so on and so forth. This is exactly why discussion about those kind of war crisis, humanitarian crisis or something like that is going to be more glorified and under our side of the house due to the fact that now people can see a country full of refugee, a country full of poor people, like traumatized people or something like that to begin with, right? This is exactly what triggers our global society to think more about the humanitarian crisis and whatnot. This is exactly why discussion is going to be more likely happening in our side of the house. Third of all, about what's going to be happening in the future. So for one thing, a new civilization. Look, in our side of the house, the goal is to make everybody to live peacefully, right? This is exactly how we're going to achieve it. And my second speaker will tell you more. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the first speaker from the closing government. Let's invite the first speaker from the closing oppositions. Here.
Check, am I audible?
Yep, you are.
Okay, the I through the chat box. Start my speech in 3, 2. First time that we're going to lose in this debate before OG is over. Because the moment they are not explanations what how this motion is going to be running since very beginning, it's going to make us burdens as SEO since very beginning. Look on how, as an example, the moment that are confusing us on how they are going to choose.
Hi, closing oppositions. I don't think like your voice is clear enough. Yeah, is anyone to confirm?
Hi, am I audible?
Yep, now it's clear. Cool. You can, restart it.
Okay. Okay. POI through chat. Start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think the first thing that going to lose in this debate is OO. The moment that they are confusing all of the benches by saying that this refugee is have to choose another country with this magic country on how, for example, this refugee is going to be choose since they are lack of any since they are lack any knowledge since very beginning, or how you are going to order a panic people to choose the country that they are going to go since very beginning. This is the moment also OO is not explanation to what this motion's house the status quo right now is perfectly enough, and how they are the country since very beginning have to responsible to what the refugees and how the idea of refugees going to be going to this country since very beginning. They not explanation. This OO coming to this debate is make us to be more burden SEO on how we are going to explain this debate since very beginning. Very fraught, of course. Talking about OG, I think OG is going to be play safe in this debate since the moment they are saying that this refugee need to move to another another country or with the same organization. Since the motion was talking about how you, as the OG, need to create a new country, meaning that you are not going to move these refugees to another country, but you are going to create a new country. How they are, how CG's talk you since very beginning. Like you are going to create another land, and they are will going to be survived in that places since very beginning. But before that, I'm going to engage to OG. OG is talking about first things. First, you will lecture stay first, many of refugees to another country. Second, humanitarian responsibility. Second, we have to take care, or maybe another country have to take care this since very beginning. I have questions from OG. The moment that you are saying that it's going to be funding by another country, and why then this funding is not going to be allocated to the country? Meaning that you're not going to be so difficult, like you're not going to take another job on how to be difficult to move this refugee, rather than you are going to give this funding by another country to this country, meaning that this funding will be allocated to where the country is suffering since very beginning. I don't understand then how OG's explanation the moment that they are saying they are going to move this refugees in very beginning, because there's an for example the limited member on how, for example, people or country that are accepted refugees since very beginning in that places, meaning that none of you are free to send of refugees from that country, meaning even if you are going to send it, it's just going to be worse, because that country is still survived since very beginning. So when you are going to move this is going to be worse for them, because on how, for example, they have to govern their society, but at the same time they have to govern another refugee with the crisis war humanitarian or conflict since very beginning. So that's why OG lost in this debate. Going to talking about CG. CG talking about three things. First, they are going to allocate it. They have a new country like another alliance. Second, there's no such a thing as discrimination at all. And lastly, is productively is great, or accessibility is there. I'm going to asking OG since very beginning. I'm going to asking CG since very beginning, how then they can guarantee these refugees to to that places, since how the ideas of refugee, they are moved to the country that to survive with that government, meaning that when you are going to move this will going to hamper them on how, for example, they are going to survive in that country, but you are going to move them to another country which is another with no life at all, and with the same person that have a crisis mental or a crisis complex is very beginning. I don't think that they will going to be survived since very beginning, because they are none of government. There are none of government are we going to lead them since very beginning, and there are none of people going to support them since very beginning. Here's the thing: the moment that you are going to take care of the people or of the refugees, meaning that there is a people uplift them, meaning that there's a people will get to guide them where the things are going to do, meaning that when you are going to removing, they are going to free to do anything. There is no such example, a certain way, a certain action that they are going to do. The only writing the funding coming from another government. In our case, we as government of that country, we are going to allocate this funding from the government to going to this to gain this refugee, and how refugees suffer since very beginning in our country. Look on how this example, they are going to be, there is no discrimination at all, since the discrimination is going to be worse under your side, because they are coming from the same places, meaning that they will trying to challenging each other on how they are survived in this very beginning, because they are coming from the same crisis, or the same level since very beginning. That's where the discrimination will going to be worse under your side. I'm going CO will going to bring this debate first question, first clarifications, second places. Judge note how this debate is how this motion is needed, how this motion is going to be needed since very beginning, that where CO will going to stand protect our clear SEO is very our stand SEO is very clear since very beginning. We are going to still protect our refugees by ourselves, meaning that we are going to take the funding coming from the government. We're not going to we are still make the funding coming from the government, but we are going to take care of it in our country, meaning that we have our regulations, we're going to take care of them, and we're going to take them in the better way, in the better way in the better way conditions. But here's the thing: creating a new country is not merely about the funding and it, but they are need a stability or they are a need good environment at all. Meaning that when you are creating a new country, you are building new environment, which is not easy to put people with the crisis economical to a new environment. Or the idea of country is not merely about how the economical environment, but it is about how the leader of the country is able to lead that refugees, how the refugees is going to be. That's how actually the refugees or the ideas of country it will going to be will come towards this very quickly. That is ultimate about this experiment.
All right, thank you, CO. Let's invite the very last speaker from the government benches, the government whip. Here.
Wait, I'll set my timer. For my POI preference, please just unmute yourself. If I don't hear you, it means I'm focusing with my speech. Okay, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. So, ladies and gentlemen, basically, first we're gonna answer the question from CO, right? So CO asking us about how come you want to move to the dead places, right? Okay, they define it as dead places. But first we need to characterize the characteristic of these refugees first, right? We think that there's no exact site that actually characterizes these refugees clearly in the first place. We think that the refugees are vulnerable. They have a completely different different starting point compared to other countries, other people from other countries like France and America, for example, who are basically the main priority for refugees to come, right? And they basically have really below starting point to the point that it's really hard for them to compete, right? And because of this characteristic, they need something new. They need to go to a place where they can actually go and expand their resources without the need to highly compete with others, right? Which is why we think that because of this characteristic, our mechanism will be better than their side of the house. So basically, CO coming to this debate talking about the need of stability, but they don't really explain to us further what exactly stability they mean here and why it is not easy to go to a new environment. Because to be fair, in their side, these refugees in the end of the day will also going to adapt to new environment. In fact, more harsher environment where they need to adapt and compete to these human resources are way more advanced than them. People from America and US who are basically really intelligent while they are basically still poor and still struggle to survive or even have basic skills to get a job, right? So which is why we don't think the argument from CO is actually significant at all. So basically there are 2 points I'm going to focus on in this debate. First, I will talk about how the refugees will look like in our side and how the new country will look like. And secondly, I'm going to do some comparisons, right? So we already told you that we're going to replace the existing countries, like developing countries who are basically lack of human resources, or like my first speaker said, neutral countries with no specific political stance and whatsoever. And why we think that this is good? Because basically there will be a higher sense of survival. How does this look like? Because we think that when these refugees are getting into a whole new countries who actually still new and their resources is still raw, they're not be seen like a burden anymore, like my first speaker said. How do we mean by this? Because we think that the possibility for these people, for these refugees to actually gonna contribute something, to be in charge, so the development of this country is gonna be higher in the end of the day. Because this country, they don't have a lot of competition that is happening inside them. So it's gonna be easier for them to adapt. For example, if countries like America, they already have a lot of engineers, they already have a lot of doctors who are actually able to rule the country. And when they go to other countries who are still neutral, developing, yes, please.
Don't you think that this kind of thing, like discrimination and anything that you or maybe seem as a burden, is also will happen in this new country? Because this new country is not stable at all, especially when it comes to the sovereignty of the countries. Thank you.
okay, discrimination will happen in both sides anyway, right? But I will tell you later why in your side it's gonna be worse. Okay, let me continue my speech. So this basically it. And because of this characteristic, we believe that our people will survive in the end. But let's take a look of other sides in this debate. First, we're gonna talk about OG. I think OG, they're analyzing only the moral side of the debate, right? Is that this is what you're lacking as OG. We're waiting for the practical side of how your people will actually going to look like. When you're talking about responsibility, you need to actually more contextualize how this is going to happen and how this is going to look like. Because basically, you need to characterize the fact that all countries have different interests, especially if you're talking about powerful countries like America or France. They have a lot of superpower, and basically, like my first said, they don't have enough space anymore, right? They'll have things like quota and etc. How can you actually guarantee that these countries will able and want to accept these other people from other countries? Because when we are talking about space, for example, I mean, you can see in France, like for example, in the soccer team in France, most of the players are actually black. It's actually one of the picturization of how France is so full of immigrants and refugees, and which is why, because of that, it shows that how the competition there is so high, and to the fact that that's why that that's also the reason why Emmanuel Macron is actually trying to limit the quota in the first place, because how France is so crowded, and because France is so crowded, you can see the amount of discriminations and the amount of issues that coming there, that there are a lot of things like mass bombing, and how other people, like the white people of France, who we characterize as the original people of France, who actually complaining with why there are so much immigrants coming to their country, to the point that the real people of France, they cannot compete anymore. And this is the issue that's gonna happen in your side of the house, because the competition and also the disagreement for the origin people will think that these immigrants are competition for them, but in fact they're also still struggling, right? But when we move these people to a more neutral places, neutral countries who actually need them, who actually need resources, who actually need people who are able to actually, use their resources, it's going to be better in the end of the day, because there will be no issues and there will be no discrimination. That's why discrimination is going to be bad and more worse in your side of the house. So what actually COO bring in this debate? We think that they're actually focusing about how, these refugees can choose whenever they want. But we think that they don't understand the meaning of refugee itself. Refugee, unlike immigrants, they are forced to go to that country, right? It means that they're coming from a place of war. They cannot choose whether they want to, I want to go to America because America is a good place. No, it's not as simple as that. Because basically, these refugees, they only can go to countries who actually want to accept them. And this is the issue here, right? This is the issue that why our mechanism is going to be better in the end of the day, because the fact that not all countries will want to accept these refugees, which is why we just going to move them to a better country, to a new, fresh countries who are still raw, and the people aren't as problematic or aren't as competitive as other countries, right? And how about CO? We already told you that CO only come with the idea of stability, which we think in the end of the day they don't have any significance. How so? Because when we talk about stability, we think that the idea of stability and instability will gonna exist in either side of this house. But why we think stability will in the end will gonna be better in our house, because the fact that how our people will able to survive in the end of the day. They do not need to face this racist white supremacists in the end of the day. They do not need to face the competition of having and getting a job in the end of the day. They don't have the need to actually facing all of this possibility to being looked down upon just because they are basically trying to dominate France, for example, or something like that, which is why we are so prejudiced. Thank you.
All right, thank you to Government Whip. To close the debate, let's invite the opposition's Whip. Here.
Hi. Am I audible?
Yep, you are.
Oh, wait. Am I like robotic right now? Because I have a kind of like trouble in my connections.
No,
All right.
it's very clear.
All right, great. For PR preference, you can just raise your hand or unmute, because I will not see it through the chat box. Gender pronoun she, her, and starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. One thing that all of the government benches didn't understand and didn't characterize with is basically on how the country itself should be formed with. We think that the country is not simply made by, for an example, by one concern on how all refugees grouping in one country is creating another creating a new countries where they can live in quote unquote peace in there. But we think that creating countries is more complicated than a lot of things, right? We think that creating new countries, meaning that you need to create new political system, new governmental system that will make sure that your country will be long lasted, and how you will create a better economical system so your country will then survive in the international challenges, like what my previous speaker said before. We think that for these countries, this is the thing that all the countries need as a primary thing in their countries, right? Within that, creating a country is not only because you are having those kind of several humanity things that exist under this government benches. Within that, humanity is not the base of creating new countries, right? Within that, creating new countries need another aspect that will create a real and a strong countries to begin with. So we think that all of government benches cases have basically fall down since the very beginning. Right. Moving on to contributions. We think that CEO contributions are very clear and very relevant. Why then? Because we think that these refugees ideas is basically to survive in the terms of international world, right? They don't need new countries. They don't need everything. The thing that they only need is how then they can live longer in one places that can accept them anyway. We don't see the problem on how countries, for example, rejecting refugees. We know that several years ago, maybe like in countries in Europe or maybe Hungary, rejecting refugees because they were afraid of refugees. But then UNHCR exists, right? And United Nations exists at the very beginning, right? These two bodies is basically those who are protecting these refugees. So if these refugees, for an example, having a discrimination in the new country, they will be resolved anyway, because the United Nations bodies actually exist to protect these refugees from any kind of discrimination and make sure that these refugees have a better places and safest places for them so they can live longer and live peacefully by their own, right? Because we think that like what countries that is mentioned by CG is not the only countries that accepting refugees. There are a lot of countries, especially those members of UNHCR, who will also accepting these refugees anyway. So you don't need to create a new country. What you need here is basically to move these refugees to the safest country so they can be able to survive in the end of the day, and they will be able to live in the peaceful situations anyway. If those discrimination happen, we as CEO believe that there will be a solution for them, especially from the UNHCR bodies. For an example, like how UNHCR then create a mandate on how those countries need to protect the refugees at the very beginning in a certain manner that they already creating rules from the UNHCR itself. This thing actually exists to then menangani these refugees anyway, and it will be a better mechanism rather than creating new country that will only destroy them in the end of the day, which means that we think that creating new country will only destroy the refugees itself in the end of the day, right? Now, under comparison. Now to OG, we understand that OG is placed safe in this debate, so they don't want to create new countries anyway. What they want is basically on how, for an example, they move these refugees into another countries that is in one organization or maybe integrated in one organization. This is a very place safe mechanism, ladies and gentlemen. Why then? Because we think that by this kind of mechanizations, you will not achieve what you need to achieve in this debate, right? So I think that OG is very fail at the very beginning. Even if they're argumentating on how humanity exists and on how we need to create a better place, safe places to this refugee, we think that their mechanization is not enough and not engaged to this motion. So we think that they fall in this debate, right? Moving to CG believes that creating this new country, I mean like quote unquote neutral country, will then create a better situation with these refugees, for an example, creating a better life because they have no sense of discrimination, and if this discrimination happens, it will not as worse as the discrimination that happened on the existing country or maybe the existing issues. We think that this is actually not true. The essence of having the survivability in a new country is basically something that is you cannot deny about. Even if you are living in one country with the same characteristic of people where you are all actually refugees, you still have a competition in there, and the competition is itself in those countries will be more will be wilder rather than the competition that's happening in the existing countries, right? We think that the competitions there is most likely on how you will get a better funding for yourself, because you are actually an individual who seek for for asylum, you seek for a better life in that country. But since it is a new country, you still don't have anything in that country. You only have yourself and the people around you that gather because they were our refugees. There will be no essence of having those kind of idea of having a better education or creating a progressivity for that country. I believe that these countries, that these kind of people will not think about a better education, better politics management, and better in everything. They only think that the refugees itself will only think on how I will survive then, how I can live longer. This is like the main ideas of the refugees itself, right? You cannot deny that, CG. And then how CG define on how this country will be a better place for these refugees is actually untrue, and it's basically utopic, ladies and gentlemen. Because of why? Those refugees is basically coming to another place to only seeking for a safety net. When you are coming to another countries that already integrated, that already have have exact governmental system and political system, you will have more safety because you have certain rules that can protect you from any kind of harm, since you are refugees, for an example. This is actually something that you need as a refugees, right? Moving on to the OO, I think that OO contributions are very low at the very very beginning, right? Because of why? We understand that OO have the same purposes with us as CO, meaning that we want these refugees to have a better places in new places, which is not a new country, but then CO didn't understand on how these refugees these refugees evacuate to another country. We think that the refugees cannot simply choose on how this on what where to country to live in. We think that this is the mandate of the UN bodies and UNHCR to give them a better safetyness, a better safe, better places to them to live in. This is how CO will win this debate. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the opposition whip and also like for all the debaters. I have to arrange my notes and yeah, I will be back to give the oral educations.
Hello, everyone. May I ask you, is there any no-paid participant in here?
Aku mau daftar tapi nggak ada temen.
Aza, dia mau novit.
Itu tuh harus satu one university or can be cross?
Nggak tahu sih.
Ya, dulu kan namanya Jovet ya. I
Betul, itu acara apa ya? Siapa pelaksananya kalau boleh tahu?
how about GCL? Are you join in Novet competitions?
I don't think so. I don't know. It's I'm still I'm still waiting for my partner confirmation, so
Oh yeah, because the deadline will be end. Ya aku juga gara-gara duluan daftar di Indonesia and Taiwan debat itu tanggalnya sama Nopet. Ini nggak bisa juga. Pas yang di kode kan ada announcement-nya tuh.
Ih, aku juga mau ikut yang Taiwan. Pengen ikut semua.
Enggak, tapi waktunya sama loh.
Oh ya, itu
Tanggalnya sama.
Taiwan tuh open kan ya?
Open varsity versus senior high school can also join individual something like that lah. Aza is a strong woman.
Apanya? Apanya yang strong, woi?
Enggak, I also guess the CO second speaker CO is Elpa, right?
Iya sih. Apa
Tahu.
sih?
I know the voice like you.
Shana nih Kalisa ya?
No,
Kalisa
I'm
mana?
I'm
Kak itu.
Elva.
Oh, Elva. Oh.
Yeah, hi Aza. Wait, Kaito, where do we meet? Oh, wait.
Yeah. In the last part also.
Oh, is this
Yes.
Rizkan?
Kok
Yeah,
kita
yeah,
selalu
yeah.
ketemu ya?
Yeah, you. Yeah, we always
Enggak,
met anyway.
all of us gitu loh selalu ketemu.
Ya, di Spuntantum juga ketemu.
Mungkin keseringan spar.
Karena mau bentar lagi lomba itu jadi sering-sering spar aja. But I thank you for Elpa and Nofra, and other debaters that can participate in this debate, because I was confused and I was in a trouble because was that 5 members of individual was not was not can join in this debate because they are also in trouble. First is about the grandpa death. Second is about the sixth condition. Third is about extra traffic jam, something like that. Thank you so much for all. Aku aja sempat mau jadi iron gara-gara teman teammateku tuh sakit. But I will inform you that you have to join in this portion UT at next year's in July until August maybe, because it's free and also the price is I think enough. Okay. Because I know Unram also join in this portion ini.
Oh ya, nggak tahu.
No cross by varsity representative.
Hmm.
All right. Hi everyone, I'm back, and oh, it's a lot of discussions. Okay. Is OG here? Incomplete. OG. All right. What about OO?
Yes, we hear.
What about CG?
Not
All
yet.
right. Okay, cool. What about CO?
We're here.
All right. OG, are you guys hearing complete?
OG complete.
Okay. By the way, the host asked me to put not just the winner, but also like the best speaker. So here you can. Oh no, not yet. Wait a minute. Yeah, the host. Who is the host here from Universitas Terbuka? Asked me not just to announce the winning team, but also like the best speaker. So
Yeah.
wait. Um. Wait a minute. Wait. Am I not clear?
You are clear.
So yeah, again, I'm saying that the host from the Universitas Terbuka not just asked me about like the verbal adjudications and stuff, like the rank, but also like the best speaker. So here is the team rank. The first rank goes to the closing government, the second rank goes to the closing opposition, the third rank goes to opening government, and the fourth rank goes to opening oppositions. And the best speaker is the first one. I don't know the name, I'm so sorry. The first speaker from the closing government, the second is the second speaker from the closing oppositions, and the third best speaker is from the first of closing oppositions. So yeah, first of all, let's move to the motions. I have some notes here about the motions. First thing first, when we're talking, oh, wait a minute. All right. First thing first, I feel like this motion is basically very basically talking about which should take care of the refugee, the international body, or basically the country. This is something that I really like people. I mean, like you guys talking about, okay, we're gonna make a country, we're gonna make a for the government and so on. But I don't really hear that why that it is the responsibility of all the government in the world, or it is this responsibility of the certain countries to take care of their people at the very first place, right? And second of all, it's not just about the responsibility and about the funding, which is like it is very urgent to talking about the funding since like the needs of the refugee are a lot, right? You have to fulfill all the basic human needs like the sanity, the food, and etc. Like the educations or any kind of very basic right they have to fulfill at the very first. And notice that refugee are a lot, and a lot of countries basically currently in war. Like you can name it like Azerbaijan, Armenians, Russian, Ukraine, Palestine, Syria, you know, a lot of countries. And how are you going to manage all of this funding going to be distributed? How are you going to manage this funding going to be this just a responsibility of certain country because they are the cause of the war, because they are the one who created the war, or because another country because yeah, you know, they have more funding because they are developed country because in the name of humanity and so on and so forth, which means like talking about responsibility and funding at the very first is really important. Second of all, in terms of it's gonna be world government or the country itself, I feel like it's gonna be good if you tell the mechanisms and how you're gonna give this kind of funding and distribute, and at the end of the day you're gonna make sure that these people are gonna guarantee in your side of the house like you fulfill the purpose of the refugee or the interest of the refugee itself, right? So yeah, because like I didn't really hear why then it is the responsibility of all the government, like will they willing to take care of the refugee while like they don't have that kind of idea, no idea where they're having war, they have a conflict, and when another country have to solve that and have to be involved in that. Like for example, you can say like in the South Korea, for example, why South Korea have to be responsible in giving the funding or giving maybe like some part of the nations just for the refugee from the Syria. At the same time, they have like the, you know, the internal issues, they have a lot of things to solve at the very first in the name of their people, right? And also like that's happened to oppositions when you're talking about the government of the certain country. Why you think that it is the fully of the responsibility, at the same time these people are basically fail because they're creating the conflict, because you have to concern about the conflict at the very first, then how are you going to guarantee that? I feel like this also like very lacking in the opposition's bench. Second of all, I feel like it's less in how you picturing the refugee itself, because like for example in status quo there are a lot of things, there are multiple way how people respond or how the country respond to the refugee itself. I will give like the some of the example. The first one, like like a lot of people goes to Australia, for example, like they are asylum seekers, but they are stopped in Indonesia. That's why like Indonesia creating the conflict. You see like in the some part of the Jakarta, because like they are refugee, they have different starting point, like what you mentioned, and these people start to making a start to making conflict with the local people, and local people, like they have protest to the government, like they don't want to help this kind of people in the name of national security, in the name of your sovereignty. So maybe like you can imagine that this gonna be happen in terms of another country, and how you're gonna picturing your motion, your stances. Second of all, if you see like how Australia, for example, how they're gonna respond to this, they're willing to take a lot of refugee because they have fulfilled the document, for example, and fulfill the standard and so on. But this bunch of people, they put it in Pacific countries, the small countries. They put a lot of camp in those islands, but they give at the same time giving money. That's why like the Pacific country at the very first, they're willing to help the Australia, because like Australia giving them a lot of things as a less developed country. But now it's also like being an issue because their capacity and ability as a country also not be fulfilled at the very first. And third of all, maybe like you can see like how developed country take bigger responsibility, like the US, like the EU, because they have this kind of funding capacity and all. Or how you can see like for example Germany, they have a bunch of like refugee, because at the very first they feel like bad as a country in the Nazi and so on. So they feel like being kind to these people and open for the refugee is gonna be balanced, and how the picturing of the world gonna look like. So is this like some small example how they can to respond? So maybe like if you want to make mechanism on your places, then how international body can manage to handle this, like how Australian do that, for example, on how you think that it's gonna be bad in oppositions because you feel like a lot of refugees in Indonesia creating conflict and so on. I feel like that the real picturizations on how this refugee respond, and you're gonna make it in your senses. And yeah, it's also like happening in oppositions. You have to prove that status quo is already exist then, because like the country already take responsibility. They give you a camp, they give you like an aid from another country, they open for money, for funding from another country, and for also like collaborations, not just in terms of another country, but also like international stage, or like LSM and GO, this kind of people, when they care to you, put a lot of donations, asking for a lot of volunteer, which like is already good. That's what I didn't like here in the positions, like how you prove that inside of the house the country gonna be have the capacity, and if you want to stay in status quo, you have to prove that status quo is already progressive or not to protect this. And that's what I'm not here. And yeah, the last one is about the refugee and the refugee itself interest. Well, I really heard like, okay, in the government you can say like a lot of speakers mention, oh, okay, a lot of you already mentioned that the interest of refugee itself, they want a safety, they want a blah 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 blah. But I feel like it's the last it's the last proof in your side of the house. I feel like the characterization is already good, but how you prove that this is the actual interest of the refugee, and you prove that international like the world government, and also like the country itself gonna fulfill the interest of the refugee itself. I feel like that's the thing that a bit missing in today's debate. And let's move to the reasons why why from the fourth rank couldn't go upper than the third, second, and first. So let's first compare OO and OG. Wait a minute. OO and OG. Oh yeah. First of all, I want to appreciate all the speakers and also like the OO for trying in this debate. And yeah, it's nice. You try to elaborate that basically argument talking about three things. Number one about human rights, second about access, and third about discriminations. But I feel like it's just last explanations on how you can explain this gonna be very exclusive in the side of the house. Because like when you're talking about human rights, for example, okay, you talk about human right, but they also talking about human right. That's why they want to make a new country. So why then you think that human right inside of the house gonna be better to fulfill? Why the government who caused the conflict gonna fulfill the human right of the society, for example, and also like for the accessibility? Then how you gonna think that this government gonna give you access rather than their new country gonna give them access when they are safety and stable and so on. So it's just like, matter of how you can elaborate this. And I don't know like how many times I said this, but I always have three things when I want to do the debate. Number one is asking what, second is asking why, and third asking how. So if you want to talk about this motion, you're asking like what you have to talk about, what you claim, why then you think that the country itself could be able to manage their refugee, and why you think that refugee have to stay in one place that are basically gonna safety for them because like they are afraid of war and those kind of miserable things, right? Second, why you think answering why then it is like gonna be good for them, what's gonna be beneficial, and what's gonna be harmful for them to go to the to the new country. And third, like how you're gonna explain the how question. For example, you're asking their mechanism, because how then you're gonna move this bunch of people? They're gonna be a lot of people. How you gonna move them? Like for example, when they talking about okay, we're not making certain places, like let's say in the Middle East, how you gonna move this kind of people from one country to another country? Will they gonna have a lot of conflict also from the government, because like their government also have a soldier, they have an army, they have power. That's why like it's gonna be like messed up, right? And the moment you move this kind of people, like this kind of mechanism with the I feel like it's a bit hard for them to prove that in their kind of mechanism. So the how question should be there. So yeah, it's just that kind of argumentation like you have to develop. Meanwhile, in OG, I feel like they very Italian first. They make the characterizations on how people like they said like, oh, they're rather dying than living in this kind of pain because it's so miserable. I feel like they really make a good characterizations. That's why like people have to move. You don't have the change to stay in your country. That's why like that's the only reason to fulfill your need as a basic human right to have a good life. Second of all, they are very nice in managing mechanism. At least like they're trying to manage like multi-layer. Okay, they're gonna have like organizations. I mean like they're gonna help the same organizations in one country, and also like in terms of funding, and also like they explain like, oh, this country have to obligate to manage the very basic human right, which means like it fulfilling the nature of the refugee at the very first. And also like about their argumentation, they're talking about morality and protection. This is what I mean. So at least they prove that because you have the morality and idea of protections in terms of humanity, that's why you have to move the people from their country because it's miserable, and to this country gonna be safe and you can develop yourself there. And that's what not exists in OO. That's why like OG upper than OPO than OO. And but why then OG couldn't upper than no. Oh yeah. Why then OG couldn't upper than closing government? Closing oppositions. First, this is sort reminder that basically BP is about contributions. And I feel like the contributions in closing oppositions is more than opening government. I have like a very slight margin. If you're talking about OO, they're really good in managing their stances. But if you're talking about the CO, they're really good in giving the response and how to debunk their argumentations. Well, I really see that their stance is basically lacking on how they prove their country can able, and this kind of refugee can be safety in their side of the house. At the same time, actually OG managed to think that and explain that basically, okay, they're gonna be way more safety in the new country, and they give the mechanism. But here is the thing. I feel like OG have more burden of proof. Number one, you didn't tell me like why then it is the responsibility of the world to take care of that, and how you gonna pick like one nation and gonna make sure that this one nation is gonna be allow you to put their refugee there, because like you're gonna have a lot of conflict to do that. You can take the example on how closing government. They said that okay, they're gonna get incentive and so on and so forth, which means like gonna be better. And also like I didn't really hear that how you make sure that they're gonna be fine there, because like international like if you get funding and also like gonna under the government of all the world, they are gonna be like so lot of interest in there, like the political issues and so on, and how you gonna prove they're gonna be safe and fine there. Meanwhile in CO they said that government know what they're gonna do, the government know how to protect the society, and it's the responsibility of the government, which is like they already answer why then it's the government, and you're not really answer then how you're gonna like make sure this kind of people are gonna be good there. And oh yeah, talking about the harm and benefit, I feel like Oh, it's almost like same actually in the second speaker, but it's way more likely to be happening in the closing oppositions because they managed to explain more about that. If I can give you also like the like the fit like the new insight, maybe you can take compare, like for example you're talking about this country gonna having like in the same organizations, right? So you're talking about ASEAN, for example, and EU. Like, what if the first conditions is what if like in the East Asia, like the Korea, Japan, China, they don't have this kind of organizations, and how if they're gonna be like the problem and where you put this. And also like the second, if you're talking about Africa and Middle East, for example, these two places are basically full of conflicts, then which kind of places you're gonna put the places for the new refugee. That's why I say that how you're gonna pick the nations. And while in the closing oppositions, I feel like they're very clear. They're just like letting the governments and also like fulfilling the sustainability and economic and so on. And at the same time, they give a lot of rebuttals and respond to your argumentations when you're talking about morality and protections. At the same time, they also like giving their a lot of contributions towards the closing government. That's why like I feel they're gonna be better in this thing. But yeah, the margin is not that much. And the last one, comparing to the closing oppositions and closing government. Why then closing government upper than closing oppositions? Oh yeah, but yeah, about the closing oppositions. I feel like the something that you have maybe you can develop in your stances is number one. Yeah, like I said before, if you want to prove that status quo is gonna be good, then but yeah, I didn't really hear that it's gonna be enough and progressive to save the refugee itself. I mean, like you couldn't like be denial when you say like, okay, government know how to protect them, give the protection and so on, but you couldn't be denial like how, for example, in Syria, like so a lot of things happen. They have the terrorism called ISIS, and their government Bashar al-Assad are very very like dictator and very central, and even like the last couple months or last year they got the disaster, for example. I mean, like their life is so miserable, and how you think that the government gonna fulfill their needs as a refugee there? I mean, like as a victim or as the one who be involved in this kind of war, and how you gonna make sure they're gonna be safe, like things like this. You couldn't denial that by saying that the government just gonna be good in taking care of them. You have to strengthen your argumentations because yeah, your rebuttal and responses and comparison weighing are very very good, but I couldn't really hear how then you're gonna make sure this refugee is gonna be safe in your side of the house. Yeah, second of all, it's about your mechanism. If you think that basically you can debunk their mechanism, but I feel like your mechanism also is very very less. That is why like but fortunately not all of the team notice about that, and not even like the POI or a response from the closing government. I mean, like you have to give the counter factual also, like for example when they're talking about, okay, we want to make new country because like that's going to be safe and so on and so forth, but you have to prove at the same time that basically this country also like getting a lot of things. They're already making their collaborations, cooperations. They have international state to help them, like international body have their own how to say it, like turunan to help you as a country. And then when you have a war or conflict, for example, you are basically the highlighting of the people. That's why like all the people gonna open the donation, not just in terms of individual, but also like the community, the NGO, and also like the country and the international funding and so on. And also like you're gonna get the special funding when you have a humanitarian crisis. You have to like fulfill this and make sure that basically just because you're already fulfilling all the things based on their camp, because they're gonna having like the camp and so on, they're protecting under the army and the soldiers and fulfilling their basic very basic human right under the peace building, for example. Yeah, you can manage this by saying that it's gonna be good, and in the future you're gonna yeah, you know what I mean, based on your how you're gonna create your mechanism. And yeah, maybe you can talking about, because like you're lacking your stances, maybe you can talking about the sovereignty of the country, how it's going to create a further conflict, for example, between or across the countries, and also like how much power do you have as a country. I mean, like the characterizations to prove that they country even like gonna be able and having capacity to solve this. I feel that's something you can improve. That is why like you couldn't go upper than than the closing government. And yeah, because like the closing government is very very detailed. I like because of the very first they're coming up with the clarifications. They also like very clear on their novelty, giving the rebuttals and also like argumentations. Something they highlight if in the closing government, at the very first speaker you said before that, okay, when talking about the further implications, because you may be having the less time and you're gonna say like, my second speaker will say that, but I didn't really hear that what the further implications gonna be happen. And then it exists on the closing oppositions, how they're gonna tackle their argumentations by saying that okay, these people having different, that's why they're not easy to adapt there because they have the different starting point, and also like they will have a new instability in that cases, and also like discrimination and so on. That's why like if you can explain the further implication in the second speaker, I think that's gonna be good. And closing government. Closing government. Oh yeah, I think just that. Wait, what else? Oh yeah. Like how you gonna make sure this as well? I feel like your mechanism is the best in this, but I feel like you miss something, that why you think that this country like Kenya and so on gonna be agree to make such kind of things. I mean like like that's why like I think the sovereignty of the country and so on have to mention by the closing oppositions, because the moment you mention about that, that's also like responding the case from the closing government, because it's not as easy as that to make a people agreeing, oh, their nation's gonna be like a new of refugee because like they open up for the other people because like they have months of money and so on. Because you can prove like for example it exists in eastern of Europe, if you say like Poland, Hungary and so on, when they have the border with the another Eastern Europe but not in EU like Russia, Ukraine and so on, they get a lot of money. But the thing is, they not just because of the money they want to have that. That's why like they have the problem with Belarus and so on, if you read the news. That's why like just because you're gonna give them incentive, then how can you guarantee, even if they are less developed country and that, but they have their sovereignty of the people and also like their government and so on, that this is gonna be creating the conflict. Yeah, I feel just that. And yeah, I'm so sorry, I might speak too fast and too much. Is there any question? All right, if the what is it? Okay. Cool. If you have like a further I don't know, like further things to talk, or maybe like you need more feedback, personal feedback, and just contact me on my number. The committee have my number, so the one who chats you have my number. So yeah, good luck for the debate. I heard like you guys want to join something like NOFET or any debate. So yeah, good luck for that, and I hope to see you next time. And have a good night.
See you. See you. See you. Thank you all for coming. Have to close this meeting.